The 13th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Lori, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Here.
Mr. Fishman?
Here.
Ms. Newell? Here. Mr. Taylor?
Here.
Mr. Buddy?
Here.
Ms. Cram?
Here. And Mr. Hart is out of town on business this evening, and he will not be joining us. Okay, there were two packets of meeting minutes in our documents. First of all, I'd like to ask for a motion. Is there a motion on the floor with respect to approval of the documents?
Move to accept the documents into the record.
Second.
Thank you. Lori, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Cram?
Yes.
Mr. Buddy?
Yes.
Ms. Newell?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Very good. We will handle the ones dated February 6th first. Are there corrections, comments, notations on the February 6th meeting minutes?
No comment.
Hearing none, is there a motion on the floor?
Move to accept.
In a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Fishman. Lori, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Ms. Cram?
Yes.
Ms. Newell?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman?
Yes.
Mr. Buddy?
Yes.
Very good. The second is dated February 20th. Are there corrections, notations, comments with respect to the February 20th meeting minutes?
No.
Hearing none, is there a motion on the floor?
Move for approval.
In a second?
Second.
Ooh, thank you, Mr. Buddy. Lori, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Newell?
Abstain?
Ms. Cram?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Mr. Buddy?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Very good. There is only one case on our agenda tonight, and that will be the order. For the chair comments, the Planning and Zoning Commission is an advisory board to City Council when rezoning of property is under consideration. In such cases, the City Council will receive recommendations from the Commission to conduct another public hearing to approve or disapprove the rezoning. In some other cases, the Commission has the decision-making responsibility, such as approving specific development plans based on a prior rezoning. Anyone who intends to address the Commission on any of these cases must be sworn in. We do not have any cases eligible for the consent agenda this evening. We have determined the order. Our rules and regulations that state no new agenda items can be introduced after 10:30 p.m. will not be in effect. The first case we will hear this evening is case number 13-114, Concept Plan. The following application is a request for review and non-binding feedback for a concept plan application for a potential new subdivision with approximately 284 single-family lots, 58 acres of open space and associated site improvements on 168 acres located on the west side of Avery Road, north of the intersection with Belvedere Green Boulevard. So this evening, many of you are probably new to planning and zoning meetings, and first of all, I would like to welcome you all and thank you for being here. One of the great things about working in this city is the engagement of the public in the process, and that's what we intend to do this evening. The order of things tonight, just to give you a little breakdown of how this will go, we will first hear from our staff, and they will provide a presentation that they have prepared with respect to this application. Following that, we will have the applicant come forward, and they will make any additional comments that they would like to make, or corrections or comments with respect to the staff presentation. Following that, we have a letter from the schools, and that letter is going to be read by Mr. Langworthy. He's our Director of Land Use and Long Range Planning. Following that, we will begin public comment, and there was a public comment sheet available out front for people to sign in. If you did not have the opportunity to sign in on that sheet and you would still like to speak, you will not be precluded from speaking. We certainly want to hear everything that all of you have to say with respect to this case so that we can hear all of the thoughts. I will go through the sign-up sheet as we have it, and following that time, I will ask if there are others that wish to speak. And you can simply raise your hand and I'll call you forward. When anyone speaks, the applicant, staff, whoever it may be, as you can see, we record these meetings, and we would ask that when you come forward, you state your name and address into the record. And I will help remind you to that, because I know it can be a little unnerving coming to the podium. So whenever you come forward, we would ask that you would begin with your name and address so that we can keep that for the record. And these minute meetings are kind of like a running tally. So each time that this case is heard, as it would progress or whatever through the process, all of those meeting minutes are enclosed. So all of the bodies that would hear anything that happened this evening subsequently will also have a record of your thoughts. With that, I think that we will get started. To let you know, after we take public comment, then we will close the floor to public comment, and the commission will have their discussion. And there will not be a vote taken tonight. This is a concept plan. This is kind of a first meeting, a first date, if you will. So it is just a time to hear what the proposals are, hear what might be on the floor, and gather information. And we like to do that in a public forum so that everyone hears the same information at the same time from all of the parties involved. With that, I hope that that clears up how this evening will proceed. And for the case presentation tonight, Claudia will be presenting. So please take it away.
Thank you so much. Good evening, Madam Chair and people from the Planning and Zoning Commission. We are here tonight, as you said, for a concept plan review for the Riviera Club application. I've provided a process slide to outline the steps that an application would have to go through to receive approval from all the required reviewing bodies. And as you said, this is a concept plan review, which is the first step in the establishment of a plan district, which requires P&Z, Planning and Zoning Commission review for complex projects such as this one. As you stated, there are no votes taken and no discussions, opinions, or suggestions made tonight by either the city or the applicant or the Planning and Zoning Commission should indicate any kind of binding or should indicate approval or disapproval for this application tonight. The applicant may also elect to get feedback from City Council. The second step as part of this process would be the preliminary development plan, which is also the rezoning as well as the preliminary plat, and that is the first formal step in the establishment of a planned unit development district. With that, it would entail a development text, which is the zoning regulations for the site, as well as a preliminary development plan, which would have all kind of site details outlined. That step requires a vote by the Planning and Zoning Commission as well as a vote by City Council. And then last would be the final development plan and final plat, which is the last step in the PUD process, which would be required before somebody could file for a building permit, and includes all final details. And again, the Planning and Zoning Commission would review and approve that, as well would City Council for the final plat. I have a slide here that outlines the site in yellow. It's 168 acres. There are 3 counties that the site is within. There's a little sliver of Delaware County in the northeast portion. It's 5.7 acres in Delaware County, 66 acres in Union County, which is the western portion of the site, and then the eastern portion, the largest portion of the site, is in Franklin County, which is about 93 acres. The site has 2,000 feet of frontage on Avery Road. And it was developed, as many of you know, as a golf course in the 70s, and with that it has many golf course amenities like cart paths, ponds, fairways, trees that were planted as part of that development. There are 2 existing access points off Avery Road. They're essentially in the center of the site, providing access to a clubhouse and banquet facility. The site also has natural features such as 2 streams, which are east and west going south toward the Shannon Glen Park, which contribute to the North Fork of the Indian Run. And then there is in the western portion of that stream, generally in this area, also a floodway and a stream corridor protection zone, which would require some analysis and also some open space created within that area. Here is the site outlined in red this time, giving a little bit more context. To the southwest is the Dublin Jerome High School, and then in the northeast is the Grizel Middle School, as well as the Deer Run Elementary School. There are single-family subdivisions surrounding the site to the south, Belvedere and Shannon Glen, as well as Celtic Estates. And to the east is the Muirfield subdivision, and then to the northwest is Tartan West. The site is zoned as part of Dublin. The zoning is split between the Union County and the Franklin County line there. On the west side, it's zoned R, which is the rural district. And then on the east side, it's zoned R1, which is the restricted suburban residential district. And both of those zoning districts permit single-family homes currently, and the requirements for single-family developments are the same in both districts. They would require a 40,000 square foot lot for a home, as well as a lot that's 150 feet wide, which at that site with 160 acres would, if you just do the straight math, allow approximately 181 homes. Also permitted within both districts are agricultural parks and public schools. I'm highlighting a little bit the community plan history that has gone into the plan we have currently in front of us. In 1988, we did not have a future land use map as part of the community plan. We have this schematic plan called a land use element, which shows large areas of the city with a land use designation upon it. I outlined in red again the approximate location of the site we're talking about tonight, right here. And as you can see, the stripes in that schematic plan show a rural residential land use designation. The plan has land use paragraphs, and I've kind of included here a short one for the northwest future land use area. And it states that it is anticipated that a certain portion of land adjacent to Muirfield Drive extension will be a mixture of residential development of varying density, some office and minimal commercial. The predominant land use is to be single-family residential extending all the way to Brand Road and Avery Road. All development west of Avery Road is to be single-family at 2 units per acre or less. The city updated the community plan in 1997, and the black outline on the slide is the corporate boundary of the city at that time. In red, again, our Riviera site tonight. In 1997, there was a contemplation that the western portion of the site would be part of the Metro Park. And as you all know, the city contributed financially to secure land with Franklin County Metro Parks west of Highland Croy Road, which the Metro Park is, where the Metro Park is currently located. The eastern portion of the site at that point was shown as a residential medium density, which was a density that allowed 1 to 2 dwelling units per acre. There were developments approved during that time when the 1997 plan was in place. Those are Belvedere to the south and Tartan West to the north. And those developments provided street connections toward Riviera. In 2007, the city updated the community plan again, and the growth scenario for the entire city that was done at the time assumed that the Riviera Country Club could develop under a what we called a conservation subdivision land use type, and that equated approximately 1.5 dwelling units per acre. During the public review process of that community plan, the property owner of the club at the time requested that the designation be made to show the current use of the land as a golf course. So staff was directed by City Council to avoid identifying the site for future development, and the Parks and Open Space designation was adopted. The current community plan then also carried forward this Parks and Open Space classification. This designation is described as land used for public or privately owned parks and recreational uses, or lands that are preserved in a natural state. This classification may include portions of private lands that have been identified for open space preservation as part of a future development project, but it does not necessarily mean they're targeted for public dedication or acquisition by the city. One of our first discussion questions, which is what we usually provide for the commission as part of a concept plan, centers on that, whether or not the proposed land use before you tonight for this site is appropriate. Many times when infill developments come before the commission has asked staff to take a look at how the development fits within the surrounding areas. And we have done this again tonight, analyzing the densities of the adjacent subdivisions. And we're providing this to you here. As you can see, the Tartan West subdivision was approved at 1.83 units to the acre. It's that large yellow area to the northwest. There is Belvedere to the south in blue, which was approved at 1.5 units to the acre. Shannon Glen in the orange, 1.7 units to the acre. And for Muirfield, we used a portion of the area and included the open space provided by the golf course there and estimated that density to be about 1.27 units to the acre. The proposal before you is 1.7 units to the acre. As I said previously, the current zoning on the site would allow approximately 181 homes at the site now at the 40,000 square foot lots. What is proposed here tonight is 284 units. And one of our discussion questions is whether or not the proposed density is appropriate for this proposal. Here's the concept plan that is before you tonight. And the concept plan does not show individual lot lines, but it shows parts of development with varying lot dimensions. I've tried to highlight these here a little bit. The development parts have been placed to either mirror or exceed the lot sizes and the widths of adjacent developments. The smaller lots are concentrated to the north and to the west, and there are larger lots to the south adjacent to Belvedere. Those development parts include lots set back up directly to existing lots. The main access point is off Avery Road in the center of the site. It's proposed as a boulevard entry point, and the secondary connectivity is provided through Belvedere, where the street stub exists today, in the eastern portion of the subdivision as well as in the western portion. There's also a secondary connection through Forenza Place, which is in Tartan West. There is no direct access to Highland Croy proposed as part of this development, but it's something that the applicant should investigate. One of our discussion questions is whether or not the relationship of the development areas is appropriate to the surrounding uses. And I wanted to talk a little bit also about the open space that is provided as part of this concept plan. And the concept plan includes 58 acres of open space, or approximately 35% of the site. And the larger areas of open space are concentrated along the Avery Road frontage, as well as in the areas of the stream and the stream corridor protection zone. There's also a large wooded area in the northwestern portion of the site, which is also shown as being preserved. There are smaller open spaces contemplated within the development, but they appear to be too small to have much usefulness or visual effect. So one of our discussion questions is whether or not the proposed open space location are appropriately located. One of the things that appear also to be lacking in the plan are buffers against the more intense uses of the high school sports areas, as well as Grizel Middle School. So with that, I've summarized the proposed concept plan questions that we have outlined for the Commission to guide the discussion, and I'll read them again real quick. Is the proposed land use appropriate? Is the proposed density appropriate? Is the relationship of the development areas to surrounding uses appropriate? And is the open space appropriately located? And as always, anything else you want to discuss, we're glad to hear. Thank you so much.
Very good, thank you for that thorough presentation. Is the applicant present? Would you please step forward, state your name and address into the record?
My name is Charlie Ruma. I'm a developer from Central Ohio. My office is at 4020 Venture Court, Columbus, Ohio, 43228. I think that's probably what you need for the record.
Yes, it is, thank you.
I've been a developer in Central Ohio for 45 years. I've actually been only in the development business in Central Ohio during that whole period of time in terms of my real estate activity. My family grew up here. I've been married for 48 years. I have 3 children. They're all affiliated in some way to my real estate activity. I have 6 grandchildren. We all live here. The reason I'm telling you this is because I want you to understand that I'm not a highfalutin developer coming in here to pillage the land. I've been here for a long, long time. I've developed a number of communities throughout Central Ohio, most notably the Wedgwood Golf and Country Club area, over 1,000 acres, over 1,000 lots, office, multifamily, and retail. I've been developing land and concerned with land and had dealings with land in Dublin since 1972. I was the guy who originally put together the North by Northwest Business Center, which became Metro Center. I got that zoned in 1972 in a little old white building on High Street. Joe Dixon was the mayor at that time, and Sherm Sheldon was your city manager. In 1963, the American Italian Golf Association decided to find a new home for their golf course. They had been located in Groveport, Ohio. They had a 9-hole course that sometimes flooded when they had heavy rains and they couldn't golf, but for the most part, they enjoyed a very productive and successful association as an American-Italian Golf Association. They decided to look for land in the northern part of Columbus, and in 1964, they bought 87 acres along, I think, what was then Sells Road, which became Avery Road. And a few months later, they put an additional contract on 2 parcels that were in Union County for an additional, I think, 81 acres. But they ended up with 168 acres, and they proceeded ahead to put plans together to build a golf course and to build a modest clubhouse at the outset and then expand on that clubhouse. This is well before there was a Muirfield Village. This is well before there was a country club at Muirfield. This is well before there was Shamrock or Wedgwood or Scioto Reserve or Tartan West or Kinsale or Safari Golf Course or Heritage and Hilliard. I mean, all of those came after. This was the first one there. At this point in time, that golf course doesn't have bent grass fairways like the others do. At this time, it doesn't have a clubhouse that's been updated with swimming pool and tennis courts. The greens are not built to PGA standards. It's a great tract of ground, and in the 70s, it was in its heyday. The LPGA had a tournament there. It was a great place to play golf, and it was well recognized. At this point in time, they've had severe financial difficulties. They've been operating with loans from members, and they just cannot make it any longer. I mean, we know that Tartan West went through bankruptcy. We know that, and restructuring, and we know that the Country Club of Dublin, Ballantrae, went through the same process and has been and pretty much had been in operation by the mortgage holder for a couple years. We know that Wedgwood had difficulty. We know that Shamrock's being sold. I just have to tell you that it's a difficult time for golf courses. These guys cannot operate this golf course beyond this year. It's going to close. This year is the last year for Riviera. And I just want to make sure you understand that that's necessary. They're operating right now on funds that I provided through a deposit for the acquisition of this land. Before we undertook this, we took a good look at what we thought was the attributes of this land. And we had looked at it before because we thought it was coming up for sale a few years ago. This land is probably the best located property that's remaining in Dublin. And it's the last remaining property in Dublin that can be developed and that we think reasonably in the northwest area now that Jerome Village is already underway. This is the end of it. This is what we see as probably the last good piece. I submitted a proposal to the owners, the American Italian Golf Association, about a year ago, along with 7 other developers. And I was fortunate in being successful in they putting their trust and hope in my being able to accomplish what would be best for the land, best for them as owners, best for the community, and hopefully a good opportunity for me. I think all of those things are possible, and that's why I'm here. I need your help. I really need to know what kind of a proposal we have and whether or not it makes sense and whether or not we should be proceeding ahead on the concept plan that we've devised, or if there are ways for us to make sure that this is improved, that will be better for the community, better for everyone. And I'm very willing, as you probably know and remember, I'm fairly accommodating when it comes to good common sense changes that make sense for the land, and I'll do that. We've already done topo studies. We've already done wetland studies. We've already done stream corridor studies. We've done soil samples. We've done a tree survey. We've already started a traffic study. We've met with the school administration. We've met with the fire chief, and we've met with the neighbors. So we've put together what we think is the best possible team. We've got Evans Beckworth as engineers. We've got the Edge Group as land planners, and Smith and Hale is representing me in this case. If you look at the surrounding areas, you'll see that on 2 sides of us, the southwest side and the north part of our property, northeast side of our property, are school systems. It's all school. There's a middle school and an elementary school and a high school. Now, I've been in this business a long time, and I can tell you that's the best attraction you can have for a residential community. Those school systems are fabulous. And to have a piece of property that would be accessible, that would be walking distance to those schools, makes this property an extremely good residential property. Not only that, but there's a multi-use path all the way up Avery Road. Did you notice I used multi-use purpose? There are paths that are going through Belvedere that stub into Riviera. There are paths that come from Tartan West that stub in. And if we're successful, we can create a pathway system that'll get us to the high school, that'll get us to the elementary school, and get us to the middle school. And I think it's a great opportunity for us to do that. We've looked at the communities around us. And to the north, there's Tartan West that is developed at 1.87 units an acre. However, adjacent to us is a condo project that's 6 units an acre. Well, you can see where it says City of Dublin in the middle. That is developed into 4-unit buildings in their condominiums. It's higher density. To the south of us is Belvedere. Belvedere is developed utilizing the stream corridor and the open spaces and the wetlands tremendously. It's a great looking subdivision, and we want to mirror that kind of development as you go north into Riviera. On the northeast or northwest side of our property, we're thinking about doing age-targeted housing for empty nesters. But I didn't want to propose that at this point in time until I got feedback from you. I don't know if that's something that you would look favorably upon, but if you did, I'd want to make sure that I included it into this plan. I think there's a huge demand for empty nester housing in this community, and I don't see any good plans other than minor plans and pockets of plans that are put together in a overall planned unit development. This could be the one place that we could utilize that kind of attempt. But I really need some feedback before I proceeded ahead with that kind of a proposal. If you look at the overall density of our proposal, we're at 1.67 units an acre. It's to the south, we're at 1.4 units an acre. all those lots that abut Belvedere have a minimum of 100-foot frontage. That's minimum. They'll probably be in excess of 100 feet. They're developed specifically for custom builders. The areas that abut the schools and abut the condominiums are going to be developed hopefully in the more standard 80-foot lot subdivision types, and maybe down as low as 75-foot, depending on what we can do with age-targeted housing. If you look at the ingress and egress points, you can see that we have ingress from Tartan West. We have 2 points of ingress from Belvedere, and we have a major entrance, and we wanted to create one single entry into the area with a double boulevard effect, so that when you drove in, you could see all the way down the open space. That single point is halfway on Avery Road. Now, we are proposing, and at our cost, would like to build a road to the west to go to Highland Croy. We met with the school administration, and the school administration has taken that under consideration, so that road can go, so that we can put traffic not only on Avery Road, but all the way out to Highland Croy and tie it into the high school. And I believe that they're discussing that issue with the school superintendent to determine whether or not there's other uses for that, and whether or not a road on the very northern part where the power lines are would interfere with their planned uses. We hope we can do that, and if we're able to, we, at our cost, will extend the road from Riviera property to Highland Croy so that we can have another point of access. And that to me would make a lot of sense, and I hope we're able to accomplish that. If you look at the streetscape, you'll see a green area along Avery Road. Now that drawing is 1 inch equals 200. So we are somewhere near 300 feet from the front of any house to Avery Road, and probably somewhere between 400 and 500 feet to the houses on the other side of the street at Muirfield. Actually, the other side of the street at the entrance is the maintenance facility for Muirfield Country Club. So I think we've done a great job in terms of a streetscape. I think we've done a great job in terms of providing the kind of density that fits in and is compatible with the area. We wanted a community that would be totally compatible with the surrounding area. And understand something. If we're successful in this process, and having done this a number of times, this is the beginning of what is probably at least a year process, if I'm lucky. So I'm talking about sometime in 2015 being able to proceed ahead with maybe engineering drawings and start. And that means I'd probably be into the end of 2015 and into 2016 before we're able to even start development, and probably finish up sometime in the late spring of 2016. So there won't be any houses on this piece of property for till at least 2016. And probably in 2016, there won't be a rash of housing. We're not going to build 284 houses in 1 year. This property will probably be developed over a period of 7 to 8 years. In good years, we're probably going to see a 30 to 40 lots, and that's probably the max of any good Dublin subdivision. But more than likely, it's going to average around 30 lots a year. And in slow years or bad economy years, it might be as low as 10 or 15. So that the impact of this development is not going to take place immediately. It's going to take place over a period of 7 to 8 years. I'd like to also, just so you understand, the price range in this property is going to start at $500,000 to $550,000, and the lowest price lots, what I call the standard lots, will probably see a price range of $550,000 to $700,000. And the higher priced, the estate lots, those lots that are abutting Belvedere, will be in the $700,000 to $900,000 price range. I was here a year ago, if you remember, and I was talking about Wellington Reserve, and we told you the houses would be in the $500,000 to $600,000 price range. The first contract is almost $900,000. There's a huge demand for good quality new housing with new amenities. Again, I'm here looking for your guidance. I'm here listening for input, and I welcome all of your input, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Very good, thank you. Okay, next, Mr. Langworthy is going to read a letter that was submitted to us just today by the Dublin City Schools.
This is a Dublin City Schools statement regarding the proposed Riviera development. There's been a significant amount of information regarding this proposed project circulating in our community. Some of that information has directly mentioned possible impact on our schools. We have been asked to provide accurate information to the Planning and Zoning Commission. The information district officials have received to date regarding the proposed Riviera subdivision has allowed us to make preliminary enrollment calculations for the proposed development using the student per household ratios of the adjacent subdivisions of Belvedere and Shannon Glen. While we have not been given any timeline for the full build-out of the proposed development, our planning department estimates of the number of students produced by the proposed Riviera development at full build-out are listed below. Elementary school, 145, middle school, 102, high school, 105. We understand that the ultimate rezoning of the Riviera Golf Course will be a City of Dublin decision, and impact upon schools is not a major factor in the decision-making process. With that being said, if this development is ultimately approved, we would ask the Commission to consider the proximity of some of the proposed homes to the Dublin Jerome Football Stadium and to the Grizel Middle School property. School properties are in heavy use throughout the year. Many sports and marching band activities take place in the stadium throughout the year. The same is true with any available green space at the middle school level. For example, practices at our facilities requiring stadium lights may go on as late as 11 p.m. Many events require the use of a public address system. Additionally, there is little break during the summer. Jerome will be hosting the nationally recognized Top Gun football camp again this year as an example. Residents who live near Kaufman's football stadium or the Jerome baseball field can attest to the heavy year-round use of these facilities and the noise that often emanates into these neighborhoods. As part of any approval plans for this development, a green space buffer zone and sound mitigation steps would benefit the district and any future city residents of this area. We would like to clear up any public misinformation regarding easements. Our district has not granted the property owner any easements associated with this project, and we do not plan to grant any easement request onto the Jerome High School property in the future. As a public school district, it is our job to educate any students who live within the boundaries of Dublin City Schools, and we will complete that task regardless of any decisions made regarding the Riviera property. And that concludes the statement.
Very good, thank you. And that statement will also be available on the city's website, I believe, as soon as tomorrow. So if you would like to review that further, that will be available for that. Okay, we are going to move into the public comment portion of our meeting. Like I said, I will be calling up in the order that we have received on the sign-up sheet. When you get here, if you could please state your name and address into the record. And if you'll notice, there's a little box on top of the podium there, and there's a red and a yellow and a green light. Our rules and regulations state that we limit public comment to 5 minutes per individual. I understand that some of you might have heard a 3-minute number out there. Our rules and regulations state 5. Lori has that timer set for 5 minutes. When you begin, she will start your time. The green light will be lit at 1 minute. It will go to the yellow light, and that will kind of be your warning that you have 1 minute of your time remaining. And then when your time is concluded, the red light will be lit. Just so if you get up there and you start seeing flashing lights, I don't want anyone to be alarmed. Okay, so The first individual signed up on the public input sheet is a Mike Mess. And again, if you could state your name and address into the record when you step forward. Thank you.
Mike Mess, 8823 Vineyard Haven Drive. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to present comments. I got to put these glasses on. I can't. Proposed concept plan for the development of Riviera Club. As I said, I'm Mike Mess, a longtime resident of Dublin. I live in the Savona condominiums, which are in Tartan West. It's a separate development inside Tartan West. It's on the north side of the golf course. Currently, I'm president of Savona. Early in the summer of 2013, a group of homeowners associations started meeting. Today, we have about 9 homeowners associations participating in the discussion groups, which represent over 3,862 homes in Dublin. You will see on the next slide the map that shows where those homeowners associations are located. What we wanted to do tonight was to express publicly our views on the proposed development. To me, the best way to express what we're asking of the P&Z Commission is a quote from one of my favorite characters, Spock. The quote is, "The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few." As you will hear from the other speakers in our homeowners association group, we believe that keeping Riviera green offers the best way to address the needs of the entire Dublin community, and it outweighs the proposed concepts that are being presented tonight. For my part, in closing, I'm here to introduce the next speakers and to give you an idea of the topics we're going to cover. These issues are: 1, maintaining the integrity of the current community plan; 2, addressing overcrowding potentials in our schools; 3, looking at increased traffic congestion in an already crowded area; 4, how we impact infrastructure and taxes in the community; and finally, offering potential options to keep Riviera green. Our group has determined we are best that we participate in this process because we think together the community can help design what's best for the many, not just for the few. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Next is Kevin Walter.
Hi there. Thank you. I'm Kevin Walter, 6289 Ross Bend. Tonight, I represent the Friends of Dublin, which is an organization of about 3,000 individuals that actively participate in community initiatives. Tonight, in section 153.002 of the City Code, it defines a concept plan as an opportunity for discussion to determine if the proposed development is, quote, generally consistent with the community plan, end quote. It is our position that this development is fundamentally not consistent with the community plan. Riviera, as Claudia discussed, Riviera was designated as Parks and Open Space in the 1988, 2007, and newly adopted 2013 community plan. It's a very important classification. The community plan describes this vision of the community as articulated and approved by City Council. It is the quintessential planning document used by city staff when discussing new projects with developers, councils, and residents. To use council's own language regarding the community plan, quote, "The community plan is the key policy guide for decision-making about Dublin's built and natural environments. The community plan is a guide for City Council and the Planning and Zoning Commission as they assess the character, location, extent of proposed public and private developments in Dublin," end quote. It's critical to understand that councils across the years, including this current council, have expressed in words and in pictures the desire for Riviera to remain classified as Parks and Open Space. This classification was approved by City Council members including Dave Amrose, Kathy Boring, Marilee Chenesy-Zerker, Mike Close, Rick Gerber, Joe Jankowski, Mike Keenan, Chuck Cranstuber, Tim Leckleiter, Barbara Maurer, Tom McCash, John Reiner, Amy Saleh, A.C. Strip, and Dan Sutphin. As community visionaries, these people have all had far-reaching visions of the City of Dublin. The developer will tell you that it is always thought that this will be developable. The developer will point to City Ordinance 65-03 that zoned this land as R1. What the developer won't say is that this was an administrative ordinance designed to bring multiple properties into zoning compliance. As you are aware, this process happens across the city with properties that predate the incorporation of the City of Dublin. There's no specific intent to establish this property as a residential development. In fact, in the 1997 community plan, the only plan that shows this as residential, 83 acres of the site were shown as metro parks. And in 1997, and with each subsequent update of the community plan, this has reflected parks and open space in the future community land use map. The community plan is, however, changeable. It's in fact a living, breathing document. However, the bar is set high to change classifications as historically directed by council. In other words, it should not be a slam dunk that a developer can come in and change the classification agreed to and voted on by generations of councils. If we allow this property to be reclassified simply because a developer wants to put houses on it, we lower the bar by which the community plan can be updated. In fact, we set the bar so low that the plan becomes immaterial to any part of the city. The developer must be able to demonstrate what the community benefit is to changing the classification. The justification of closing the donut hole is simply not a compelling enough argument. Riviera is a very large tract of land surrounded by a built environment. The developer calls this infill, closing the donut hole. In fact, we believe that Dublin City Council has affirmed that this property should not be filled. It should, in fact, be preserved. It is the only major parcel of undeveloped land in northwest Dublin, and as such, great care should be taken in determining its future. In a memo dated June 11, 2013, quote, staff was directed by City Council to avoid identifying this site for redevelopment on the future land use map. How much clearer can Council be that they do not want this site redeveloped? Council has been very clear in affirming this future land use map that indicates Riviera's designation as parks and open use. Council has made several classifications and discussions about this, calling it a vital green area of the community, beautiful vistas. Dublin has always dared to accept more from itself. The community plan has been that document that articulated that grand vision, and this development is in direct opposition to the community plan. I ask you to consider where you stand. Do you stand behind the vision of council for years, or you just stand behind the opportunistic parochial vision of another home builder? I stand with the community plan. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Next, we have a Bob Fassman.
I don't know if that applause was for me coming up here. I don't think so. It would have been nice.
You can claim it. I think that's good.
I'm Bob Fathman. My wife and I live at 5805 Tartan Circle North in Dublin in the Muirfield Village subdivision, where I chair the Civic Action Committee of the Muirfield Village Civic Association. And I'm here to talk to you about the dreadful impact of this development on schools. I think there's a little tape delay for the people out there just now cheering, yay, people out in the hallway. I want to talk to you about some of the numbers up here. If you take a look at the central number here, Deer Run Elementary School has a capacity of 400. Riviera, as you heard from the schools, is going to be bringing in an extra 145 students just into that elementary school, putting it at almost 150 students over capacity. Jerome High School is going to take the biggest hit. They're going to come in at 341 over capacity upon build-out. And Grizel Middle School, which is a little under capacity at the moment, still is going to be hit at 52 over capacity if you approve this. Is this good for the school district? Is it good for the children? Is it good for the parents? Absolutely not. You know, this is a terrible plan to turn this piece of property in the northwest quadrant that was always seen as green space into housing, with a lot of those on 75-foot lots. If I could have the next, I'm going to give you school math here, take you back to your school days. If you take a look up here at the first box area here, the information provided by the Dublin Schools Administration says that in 2013, it cost $12,700 per student to educate our children, and in my case, our grandchildren. The state reimburses Dublin schools only $1,035, leaving $11,755 not reimbursed by the state. That comes out of local property taxes. Taking that down, at 1.24 students per home, and that's a very conservative estimate. When you think about new homes being built of the type that Mr. Ruman was describing, in all likelihood, you're going to see more than 1.24. That was based, as the letter from the school superintendent said, based on Shannon, Glen, and Riviera, which are starting to age a little bit. They don't have as many young families as they once did. But even going with the most conservative estimate, if we take 1.24 students per home, that means a cost of $14,500 per home to the school district if you move this plan forward. A school property tax, we were figuring a $400,000 home based on 75-foot widths. The property taxes going to the schools from a $400,000 home currently in Dublin come to $7,000 a year. That means the schools are going to be stuck, and who are the schools? It's we, the taxpayers. We're going to be stuck with an extra $7,500 per home to educate the children. That is not coming from the state. It's not coming from the homes. It's coming from all the rest of us. How many of you in the room actually live in the city of Dublin? Raise your hand. Okay. All of those people with their hands raised are going to have to pay more taxes for this. And that's to operate, and that's per year. You're going to see $2,100,000 per year in extra operating costs that this will burden the school district with. And if I can have my final slide up there now. We also need classrooms. You saw the overcrowding this is going to impose on the school district. As best as we can figure, we're going to come up with a one-time cost of nearly $11 million to construct additions, to put in classroom space, gyms, land use, athletic facilities. So you have a one-time expense of about $11 million, of course, spread out over a period of time a little bit. But you also have that $2,100,000 per year. This is not a good plan for the school children, for the schools, for the taxpayers of Dublin. And we hope that you will give that feedback to the developer, killing this plan, not moving it forward. If you have any questions about my math, I'll be glad to answer those for you. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Next is a Kip Rosier. Apologies if I mispronounce your name.
I'm used to it. Good evening. My name is Kip Rosier, 8079 Allymore Green, Dublin, Ohio. As you can see, I'm the president of the Belvedere Homeowners Association, and recently our board you can tell we have a lot of people here very interested in the subject tonight. As far as our homeowners association, we recently voted unanimously opposing this plan to Riviera. I just wanted to set that forth before I begin. One of the major concerns for Belvedere is the traffic impact. You can see based on the 2003 traffic counts and the 1990 Sierra Club Transportation Report, we're expecting, based on the 284 homes that the developer is proposing, that we will see an additional 2,000 trips daily added to our area. This represents, this math is actually wrong, this is actually a 20% increase, which is a significant increase in traffic in our area. Clicker, next slide. The major intersection that we're talking about here is the Avery-Brand Intersection. I'm sure everybody's familiar. In 2012, there was a really bad accident in this intersection. A 4-year-old child was thrown from the vehicle and seriously injured. Also in 2013, there was a injury, accident in the same intersection. So this intersection is infamous for lots of traffic. As anyone here can attest, during peak traffic times, carrying your kids to and from soccer practice, baseball practice, you're often standing looking to see who's going to go first in this intersection. You have cars turning, you have cars going straight through Brand, straight through Avery. It's often confusing, very confusing. So our sentiment is that this development is going to add in more traffic. It's going to cause more problems that we already currently have in this area. An additional concern that Belvedere has is the additional cut-through traffic that we'll be experiencing. This is basically a landlocked area. It's very conducive for these people to travel this route through the neighborhood to come out. Mr. McCash here, a former city council member back in 2007, said this land had a designated use, talking about Riviera up here. These streets should not be stubbed at the golf course. He was pretty much saying that he was opposed to these streets being stubbed in. I know the developers mentioned this, that these were stubbed in, kind of ready to go, but that wasn't the case. Okay, next. As far as the additional traffic, there are further traffic impacts all along Avery Road. I'm sure many of you traveled this route, coming out to Perimeter to hit 33. You're talking about Brand Road at Avery here, traffic impacts, the Muirfield Avery Road impact. Also the Perimeter Loop area is very congested, especially at peak traffic times. Also Highland Croy. Who's tried to make a left-hand turn during rush hour traffic onto Post Road from Highland Croy? I mean, it's like playing Frogger back in the day. It's crazy. You can't do it. I refuse to go this way during that time. So based on all these information that I provided tonight, traffic is a major concern for Belvedere, and I think the surrounding neighborhoods as well. So please consider this plan very carefully and really think about what you're doing, because like we said before, what is the benefit of this plan? What is the benefit to our citizens? What is the benefit to the community? Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Scott McCourt.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I wanted to talk to you about some impact. I'm sorry, Scott McCourt of Celtic Estates, 8155 Avery Road. I wanted to talk to you about some of the infrastructure and financial implications of the proposed concept plan. As this plan initially came to light, and I was talking with some of my neighbors, other friends and residents, initial thoughts were more houses, more property taxes, more revenue for the city. This is a good thing. But we also just started talking, well, there has to be a cost to the city to support these houses. And so evidently the city had the same questions, because they produced a study into the land use study for residential housing in Dublin. And what they found was, well, yes, we do generate revenue. Our costs are almost three times what we generate in revenue. And that costs the city over $1,700 per household on an annual basis to support each one of these new residents. So with the plans that are proposed for us today, that's almost $500,000 that would cost the city of Dublin, potentially the taxpayers, to support this concept plan. So we're definitely against that. Furthermore, the study says the type of housing that we're looking to do here produces the worst fiscal result for the city. Our own plans say this is not a good use of this land. Next slide. As with any development, we need to look at some of the other impacts to the infrastructure: water, traffic, sewer. And while Kip, you've heard from Kip on the traffic, we've also understand that there is adequate water supply that they would be able to tap into. The understanding is that there's not adequate sewer capacity to do that. The plans that are on the border, and the sewer capacity that's on the border of this property today, was built and designed for that area always being green space. And there is no plans or proposed plans to change that at this point in time. So there's cost to do that. We're estimating that about $700,000. When we talked about, Mr. Rozier talked about some of the impact of the traffic. You know, what's the financial impact of that? And whether it be the intersection of Avery and Brand, Avery and Glick Road north of it, or as well as Memorial Drive where it impacts there. So we know that in other locations in the city of Dublin where we've had to put in roundabouts, it's $2 to $3.5 million to adjust those areas. So now there's a plan to do $50,000 worth of study for the Avery-Brand Road, but there's other costs for some of the other intersections and the other impacts that may be there as well. So what does all this mean? You heard from Mr. Fathman earlier about the schools, $2.1 million on an annual basis. You've heard that there's also, almost an $11 million one-time charge. I've just talked about almost $500,000 and what it costs the city for each of the households to support on an annual basis, as well as some of the one-time charges to support the infrastructure. So we're at $2.6 million on an annual basis and almost $15 million for this development to go forward. So while I understand that there is, financial benefit to the current owners, to the developers, there's not a financial benefit to the city and its residents. We talked about no benefits to the school. It's going to be an additional burden to them. There's an additional burden to the city's finances, as well as potential taxes to the residents. And not only is there no benefit to the environment, this actually is detrimental to the environment, taking away one of the largest green space areas we have in northwest Dublin. So as you heard from the city planner and from Mr. Walter, this is in direct violation of what the current city plan is. And from the information that we've seen tonight, do not see any viable reasons of why we should rezone and amend the city plan to support this development. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Next up is Christine Gronsky. You could claim it if you time it right.
My name is Christine Goronsky. I am the president of the Brandon Homeowners Association. The situation Dublin is facing with River Country Club, as Mr. Ruma pointed out, is reflective of a trend being seen around the country. As he said, there are an abundance of golf courses, and they've made it more difficult for many courses to remain profitable. Dublin has an opportunity here to be a leader in solutions other than developing every failing golf course. A leader in the solution for this trend, along with some other communities that we will highlight here. We simply would like to present a few of the options the owners have, or that the city has available to them, other than erecting houses and flooding this community with added expense and traffic. Next slide. First option, this land could be sold to the city or even a coalition of the city, school district, and metro parks for passive parkland, filling a large gap in park coverage in the northwest quadrant of the city. At this time, there is no major public park in Ward 3. Perhaps the school district could partner with the purchase, as this land abuts school property, and it could be turned into a nature or learning lab. The property has landmark trees and natural streams, which would make it ideal for this purpose. On a side note, with the landmark trees, I have worked with Mr. Ruma on the Wellington Place development that abuts to Brandon. Landmark trees that were promised to be preserved, I understand, have been removed. A previous community plan showed the west half of this property, as we saw here, becoming part of the Glacier Ridge Metro Park. It would be far less expensive for the city and schools to purchase this land than to service 284 homes on this property. Next slide. Here's an article from the December Columbus Dispatch describing the case of a city in Castleberry, Florida, who is preparing to buy a closed golf club and turn the area into public parkland with nature trails. And next slide, please. This slide shows an article from the Dispatch just this past February describing a golf course in Granville, Ohio. The village and township of Granville combined. They did not buy the golf course, but they bought a conservation easement on the land open there. This cost them approximately $2 million. It guarantees forever that the land will not be developed. The club is allowed to keep the title to the land, The clubhouse, they can continue to operate if they so choose and supplement their income from payment with the payment from the city, or they can sell it as parkland. Next slide, please. Whether the city buys this land or it remains in the hand of the Riviera owners, some of the land could be reconfigured into wetlands and used in a corporate trade through the Wetlands Bank. In information we received last week from one of the wetland banks in Ohio, we have learned that the owner could realize a gain of between $17,000 and $65,000 per acre. It can still operate as a golf course if they choose, but some of the land would simply have to be converted to wetlands. And finally, just as Dublin contributed over $7 million to the Metro Parks Board over a period of many years to double the site of Glacier Ridge, a consortium could avoid the cost of buying the property outright and instead purchase it over time, giving the club payments over, say, 10 years or any set amount of time before ultimately owning the land and extending the life of the golf club if they wish, even allowing them to buy back if they decide at that time. These are simply a few of the options and alternatives for this land. It does not need to be converted to unwanted housing. What we are asking for consideration is this: how does another subdivision in this area benefit Dublin? The answer is, it does not. Just because it is the last parcel in Northwest Dublin to be developed doesn't mean it should be. Thank you.
Next, we have a Rick Goebel.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, my name is Rick Gable. I've lived in Columbus for over 35 years, and I've lived in Dublin for the past 7 years.
Your address, please.
Oh, yes, 6849 Vineyard Haven Loop, I'm sorry. So anyhow, I've been in I've been in the Columbus area for a long time, and I've been in Dublin for 7, and I have to say I'm so fortunate and blessed to be a part of this community. It's been just a great experience for me. I live in the Savona development, which is part of Tartan West, and a number of my neighbors, as you heard, are here tonight with me. And you can imagine we're concerned because our property is adjacent to the golf course. But I think more importantly, our concern is, as Mike Mess had stated, the needs of many outweigh the needs of a few. And our concern is about the whole city of Dublin. So basically, what we wanted to do is I'm going to summarize basically what we've talked about here tonight. The revenue from the development's not going to offset the expense based upon the efforts that we've put into this study, and we've met many weeks talking about it. The traffic congestion is already a problem, and that's only going to get worse. We've seen it at Highland and Perimeter. We know that we're talking about the Avery-Brand Intersection, which can become very congested. The schools will be overcrowded, and the concern there is about the expense. There are already a number of existing empty properties in other developments that surround us. So there's plenty of opportunity for expansion and development without developing Riviera. And then the next thing is, the long-term community plan, we feel, is to move toward development of Riviera is not consistent with that plan. And we would dissuade you from moving in that direction. We believe overall that the solution is for green space, be it a golf course, a bike path, a park, a wetlands, whatever. We think we can be creative as a community, and we can identify a better fit and preserve the beauty and the history that is Riviera, because it is and was, well, it is one of the first golf courses in the area, and it's beautiful. So anyhow, I guess the plea that we would have would be for you to take the hard work that we've put into the last several weeks and months and put it into some serious consideration and understand that what's good for the city of Dublin is good for all of us, and it shouldn't just benefit a handful of interests. So with that in mind, I'd like to turn to the people that have showed up here tonight, and I know that we're going to have a delayed reaction, but I'm going to say, ask everyone, if you, in this room, if you support what we're trying to accomplish, if you would just raise your hand. And for all those who can't be present, I would ask, and we'll have a delayed feed, obviously, that they clap and reaffirm the fact that the direction toward developing a parkland or green space and preserving it for Riviera and for the city of Dublin is the right direction. So. That's pretty much our group's presentation.
Very good, thank you. Next, excuse me, on the next line, there are two separate names, Dana Mack and Mike Ensminger.
Michael can speak.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. And if I might have some pictures I'd like to pass out. I think they have them up on the screen, but I think these speak a pretty good story.
If they have them on the screen, that would be fine. It's, per our rules and regulations, we're not allowed to accept new materials on the night of the meeting because we simply want everyone to have access to the same material.
Okay. Claudia, do you have those up?
I have two that.
Okay, I think that'll work.
Okay.
So, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. My name is Mike Ensminger. I live at 7502 Kilbritton Lane. A lot of what's been discussed this evening is appropriately theoretical for a concept plan, but I think I'm going to diverge into reality for a little bit here. In November 2011, the city notified Wellington Place residents that the applicant, Mr. Ruma, would be purchasing the undeveloped tract of 24 acres to the west of our subdivision on Brand Road and would be building 28 high-end family houses. Now at the applicant potentially purchasing Riviera Golf Club, we thought that this would be an appropriate forum to highlight the challenges residents of Wellington Place continue to face 2.5 years later after that initial application was submitted. The central theme woven throughout our anecdotal accounts tonight is the overall disappointment in accountability and follow-through by the applicant and the builder. In 2011, the applicant promised multiple custom home builders would be involved in the development of Wellington Reserve. I would be thrilled if I was wrong, but my current understanding is that Virginia Homes is currently the only builder of all 28 of those houses. Mr. Ruma is not the builder, and I know he's closely related to the proposed builder, but I haven't spoken to Mr. Ruma since Wellington Reserve received city council approval, despite his continued assurances to remain actively involved in the project. I'm sure if anyone in this room is driven by Wellington Reserve along Brand, they'd question the applicant's commitment to keep with the rural nature of the Brand Road corridor. The applicant promised to maintain the integrity of Brand by keeping historic trees and the general pastoral look and feel of the area. We've been left with a gaping, treeless space that does not fit with the rest of the natural landscape. And it even included the convenient yet accidental destruction of a 100-year-old tree right on the frontage of Brand Road. That was negotiated to be spared in the process. The dry basin ponds are eyesores at best and have done nothing but negatively impact the ponds and drainage in the front of Wellington Place. And I don't know, Claudia, if you have one of the pictures showing the pond.
I do.
Okay. As you'll recall, one of our subdivision's two key asks, we were trying to be reasonable throughout the whole process here because we knew that this was fait accompli in terms of that parcel being developed. We had two key asks during the Wellington Reserve discussion. One was to keep as many mature trees as possible. Anyone driving into that development now can see with their own eyes that, in Mr. Ruma's words, is basically pillaged. There were over 1,100 trees on that property, and I don't have an accurate count of how many are there, but you can drive onto the property and tell there's not much left. Most shockingly, when I talked to the Virginia Homes project manager, he freely admitted he was unaware of the opacity requirements required by Planning Commission and City Council regarding the landscape hedge on the eastern border and southern border of Ballybridge and Kilbritton. If you remember and recall 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, this was a heavily negotiated point in our discussions with Mr. Ruma. Our second request was that the applicant control flooding and runoff from the existing development. When multiple residents expressed their concern to Virginia Homes in July, August, and October, we received little more than lip service. In fact, they told us each time that it was a 100-year reign. So I don't know, I haven't been alive 300 years, but there were 3 100-year rains in 3 months. It took them more than 8 weeks to provide a temporary and inadequate solution, and I've brought a couple pictures to share. So that's the view I got to look at for about 8 weeks, off and on, out of my back window. And Virginia Home's temporary solution was to put up that orange fence. And that's not the landscaping fence that's required by the EPA either. That was their solution. They basically destroyed my backyard, ruining bushes, ruining grass. I mean, can't let my dog out. These are issues that real people face. This isn't a developer issue. This isn't theoretical. This is stuff that you can't do. And Virginia Homes promised regrading of my backyard, replacement of those shrubs, mulching and sodding the backyard. So 9 months after our last communication with them, all they've done is pushed an ungraded, root-laden backfill mound of dirt along my property line, driven heavy construction equipment onto my backyard without my permission at 6:55 in the morning on a Saturday, potentially under the guise of just getting it done before I even knew. And when I confronted them about it, and I tried to remain calm, they said, well, we told your neighbor that we were going to be doing it. Last time I checked, that's not permission to enter my property. Perhaps one of the most easily correctable and yet most perplexing issues the homeowners in Wellington Place have faced in the general lack of accountability and oversight exercised by Virginia Homes to date. Just last summer, we witnessed a Virginia Homes representative, I don't know if he was a contractor, subcontractor, swinging from and tearing off a limb on one of the trees that the city designated by their arborist to keep. A subcontractor verbally assaulted 2 residents, threatening one of them, and in one instance, he took the backhoe and swiped at the root system of a 50-foot tall tree that a half an hour earlier was guaranteed by the project manager to remain in place. We were reassured that our neighborhood would not be used as a construction entrance. The dump truck sped down the street, damaging the roads and frustrating the residents. And I'm almost done, I see the red light. Loud construction began as early as 6:45 in violation of city code, even on weekends. So Wellington Place homeowners have tried to remain patient and reasonable throughout the whole process with Virginia Homes, but have continued to be disappointed. And this is only a 28-home development. Imagine these problems magnified tenfold with the introduction of nearly 300 homes in Riviera. And for these reasons, the residents of Wellington Place are opposed to this new development. Thank you.
Okay, next up we have a Jamie Davitt. I apologize if I have butchered your name.
Hi, I'm Jamie Davitt. I married into that last name, so continue to butcher it. I live in Belvedere at 8169 Summer House Drive. And I have kids, and my husband and I live in that neighborhood. We've been there almost 3 years. Prior to staying home with my kids, I've been in the financial industry for 10 plus years. I really,
I just wanted to make sure I had the right one. Was it
Sure.
the numbers or the traffic?
It's the one that everyone seems to have the copy of.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. All right, great. But I'm not going to start with that slide. First, I just wanted to bring you back to George Bailey and It's a Wonderful Life, as he was talking to Potter as his father had just passed. And he said, it's the people who do most of the paying and spending in this community. And I just look at this outreach, and I want to give this group a round of applause for the feeling that we have that everyone is here and trying to represent that. So here's my round of applause. The second thing I'd like to bring back from that movie that I really didn't think I was going to until something I heard earlier was about the financial struggles of our first golf course, Riviera. The same thing happened in that movie with the Savings and Loans building. And George Bailey reached out and said, give it time. Give us time. Don't panic. We don't have to do this right now. The same way, let's give Riviera time. We do not need to develop it right now. It was a financial stress that occurred in many industries. We felt it with how many different companies went under during that time. But the difference is we can have a new airplane company come out. You can have that can happen, but you cannot undevelop what you start with Riviera. So I have three main points that I want to make with the Planning and Zoning Committee tonight. I want to talk about the land availability, and if you can go to that slide, of the surrounding properties. All neighborhoods started during that same time that the financial struggle had occurred. I'm also going to talk about our brand, our Dublin brand and reputation. And thirdly, just the destruction of an estimated $10 million asset, Riviera. So as you can see, besides this potentially being a great place to develop, we already have a lot of started developments that are within a mile of Riviera. We have Oak Park that I'm not sure when it's going to finish. It started in 2009. It's 69% undeveloped. There are plenty of houses there that could be built. Same thing with Tartan Ridge at 39% not developed. Tartan West Sienna, 70%. And Jerome Village, as we all know, if you count that, it's at 91% undeveloped. So we have 2,000, a little over 2,000 lots available within 1 mile of Riviera Golf Course. So why would we destroy Dublin's oldest golf course? So my first point being the property that's already available. We already have an abundance of housing that's available for people to move into the area. My second point is about our brand, being known for green space, for our parks, and for our golf courses. And it just doesn't make sense to say, let's get rid of one of our largest pieces of green space that we have, this parcel of 168 already landscaped green space, so that we can build more houses when there is plenty of houses available. In addition, I wanted to answer one thing that was brought up before. There are 91 trees left over from that 1,100 that were chopped down for 28 houses. 91. There are 1,100 trees that were destroyed for 28 houses. And so I leave this group with this. It's a Chinese proverb, and I want to understand where we think we're going to go with this. One generation plants the trees. Another generation gets to benefit from the shade. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have a Greg Smith. I can pronounce that one.
Good evening. I think you may have already commented there. I couldn't hear you on the way up, but I wanted to help you out with a really boring and simple name there. So, I'm Greg Smith, 6457 Greenstone Loop. That is in the Belvedere subdivision. My family made the decision to move to Dublin about 4 years ago. We lived in another very nice suburb, Upper Arlington. It was after our third kid was born, needed a little bit bigger house. We started doing our homework and looking around, and really we're looking at Upper Arlington and Dublin. And we chose Dublin because of the schools. We chose our particular house, and we continue to have our monthly budget killed every month because of it, because of the views and green space of this particular house. So we paid a huge premium to live near green space, and green space that's designated as such in the Dublin City Plan. And now you're faced with a big decision where you could really kill the logic behind two of our reasons for moving to Dublin. Now I'm actually worried we'll be forced to move back to Upper Arlington. I know that sounds a little dramatic, but I won't hesitate to do it if I think it's what's best for our kids. And what I'm seeing now is that Upper Arlington won't overcrowd the schools, which you saw the numbers earlier. There's no place to put these kids from the new homes. My daughter's classroom at Deer Run was actually a trailer last year. My other daughter was told at Deer Run she was lucky to have a desk. You know, are we trying to mess up our high rankings? Not the way to go. And I don't see any plan, any numbers that have suggested from anyone that we can take in these additional kids from these additional homes and make it work with the schools. UA made some big mistakes a long time ago and definitely wishes they could have a lot of that green space back. One thing I'm 100% confident about, though, they won't build over their golf courses there. They're not going to make that mistake. So we've got a proposed development here which would destroy the nearby schools and destroy green space we can never get back. Please look to what's best for the future and protect Dublin's most important assets. Thank you.
Next, we have a Jamie LaRue.
Good evening. Jamie LaRue, 8494 Glen Almond Court in Dublin. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and thank you for your service to our community. See, you get a hand.
We'll claim that one.
Excellent, as you should, as you should. We are a relatively recent relocation to this community. We've had 5 in our history, so we have some history on picking houses. I say that the development of 284 homes on Riviera would drastically change the character of Dublin, represent a major departure from your plan, and have the adverse effects on schools, traffic, and taxes that you've already heard a lot about tonight. And you have a unique opportunity to influence this. When we moved here, the Dublin schools were a driving force of why we chose this community. We, again, have a lot of experience at this. We look at what other options are there. We looked at New Albany. We looked at Westerville. We looked at Powell. We looked at other places, talked about what has adjacent communities around it, what's the state of development, what kind of traffic is in the neighborhood. And we thought that the outstanding schools and the character of the community really swayed us. We chose Dublin, our neighborhood, our address, because of where we could send our daughters to Deer Run, Grizel, and Jerome. Had the schools been overcrowded, had the taxes been higher, had the traffic been worse, our decision may have been quite different. Now, so what's that left for you to do? What's the choice that you face? Sure, you could ask them to have more buffer zone for the school. You could ask them even, could you donate land to the schools to enable development of more buildings? Could you have them fund the construction of sewers and roads and subsidize the public services that they're going to need? Or you could do something much simpler and simply keep it green. So please protect the integrity of the community plan and do not approve the proposal as currently stated. Again, thank you for your service and thank you for this opportunity.
Okay, next we have an Ed Siddell. Sure. Okay. We'll wait for him. 30-second delay. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ed Siddell. I live at 8153 Summerhouse Drive West. My family and I have lived in the Belvedere subdivision for the last 10 years. And specifically as it relates to the traffic, we live at the intersection of Timble Falls and Summerhouse Drive. For those of us in Belvedere, the traffic is already pretty bad in the mornings. Because Belvedere subdivision and Summerhouse Drive, it's a cut through for the high school traffic, causing safety concerns and traffic jams from about 7:20 in the morning until almost 8 o'clock. As you can see on this very first slide right here, this is Summerhouse Drive, and it's actually an oval. It comes around to Abbey Glen, and the kids actually go around both sides of the circle. So in the morning, if you're trying to get to work, you can't. You're blocked. This next slide. It continues all the way up through Grizel and Deer Run elementary school. And the next slide, this is a video, and this is really important because this is at Belvedere Green and Summerhouse Drive West. And the kids, they don't stop. Summerhouse Drive is an oval. They race around to the left, and they also go to the right, and it's really dangerous for the kids. So they actually use it as a racetrack. Now, we've called the city of Dublin, the police, and complained for a long time, and they finally put out a speed check. And what they did is they stuck it on the left side. Well, the traffic got so backed up that it showed that the kids were not speeding because they couldn't, because it was that backed up. Okay? So now imagine, as bad as the traffic is right now, and looking at this, our street is Timble Falls. That is the cut-through for the proposed development at Riviera. Imagine an additional 284 homes coming down our street onto Summerhouse Drive. Okay, that is just an absolute recipe for disaster. You know, like I said, we've called the Dublin police. They said that they cannot and will not put officers there every day. They can't even put speed bumps on there because they cannot afford the man hours or the resources. So my question for you is, if we can't afford it now, how are we going to be able to afford it with the extra 284 homes? Thank you.
Okay, the next, excuse me, the next name on the sign-up sheet is Mark Mace. I apologize. Mark Mace.
Hi, my name's Mark Mace, and I live at 6469 Greenstone Loop in the Belvedere development. Approximately 12 years ago, my wife and I decided to move to a better school district for the benefit of our children. We decided the Dublin school system would be the best fit for our special needs child. In addition, we wanted to live in a community that placed a special importance on parks, green space, and bike paths. We chose to live in the Belvedere development due to the close proximity of parks, bike paths, and the beautiful view we have of the Riviera Golf Course. We were pleased to find out later that the Riviera site is identified as parks and open spaces. Both of my children have attended Deer Run, while our special needs son is currently at Grizel. We have fought for years to obtain the services we now enjoy for the first time. We finally have an excellent intervention specialist and are satisfied with the services we are receiving. It's been a long road and a tough fight. For every Riviera child that attends Deer Run Elementary or Grizel or Jerome, a child currently attending these overcrowded schools will most likely be sent elsewhere. School redistricting is an almost certainty. If my child is sent to another school, we will lose everything we fought for over the years. Intervention specialists don't follow your children. They stay at their schools. And with almost 8 to 12% of kids on individual education plans, many families will be affected by the loss of their intervention specialists. The intervention specialist is a key to the entire IEP process. If you or any of your friends have a child on an IEP, you'll understand what I'm talking about. Please don't rezone this property. There's too many homes and people that are against this project. Listen to your residents. Thank you.
Okay, well, that concludes the names on our sign-up sheet, but as promised, that will not preclude anyone from speaking. So as the gentleman in the back there has raised his hand, when I call next time, please raise your hand. I will ask you to come forward. Same rules will apply. Please state your name and address into the record. The red, yellow, and green lights will light at the appropriate times. Thank you.
They didn't even hear my name. Good evening. My name is Brian Faller. I live at 8703 Finlaric Drive. I came to tonight's meeting. I thought against this plan that the applicant is seeking, but I wanted to keep an open mind. And after hearing Mr. Ruma speak, I think we need to remind ourselves of why he said this plan should be approved. He said that Riviera is no longer a good golf course, that it's past its time. That may be, but I don't think that that means we should develop this green space and put 284 homes in that area. He said this is the last good piece of land to develop. Well, again, that may be, but as the woman said earlier, that doesn't mean that it should be developed. He said that he's already started a traffic study. Maybe I missed something, but I didn't hear what the results of that traffic study were. I didn't hear him disagree with what other presenters have said about the number of cars and the increase in traffic. He said that he met with school administrators, but he didn't say that he disagrees with the statistics that have been showing about school overcrowding. He said that the community that he wants to develop will be within walking distance to the schools. What he didn't say is how the traffic that this development will cause will create impediments to children walking to schools who live across Avery or who aren't right along that side of Avery where Griselle and Deer Run are located. This traffic, it's not just the children, but, Dublin is a big cycling community, bicycling community, and a lot of cyclists travel up and down Brand, travel up and down Avery. And to have approximately 2,000 more cars a day traveling on these roads, I think is something that needs to be taken into account. And so I came here with an open mind, but I haven't heard anything that's convinced me that the community should support this development. And I think it's telling that not a single person in this community thus far has got up and said, yeah, let's do this. This is a good thing. Not one person except the developer. I think that's telling. Thank you for your time.
Okay, is there anyone else that would like to address the commission? Others? We will not field questions this evening. We will be taking notes. We'll close it off, and then we'll have discussion as a result of what we've heard this evening and with respect to the speaking points that we have made earlier. We won't have a question and answer time this evening.
They can stay in here.
But hopefully we will. Very good. And if you would like to have a question posed, we will have a list of issues that we deal with that will be addressed during our discussion time.
Okay, my name is Jerry Williams. I'm at 6290 Belvedere Green Boulevard. I guess if there's not questions, I just want to, I came in here, I think maybe a little bit different than everybody else. I tried to come in this with a completely open mind. I didn't really have an agenda. But after listening to everything, I just want to ask you guys, our leadership, I'll ask the question, and if I step away, I'd love to hear from any of you. I just want to tell you, what other than Mr. Ruma, what would be good about this? I'd allow any of you to answer that question. I just want to know and to be educated in my own.
And
what are the positive sides?
That's a great question. That will certainly be one of the items that's addressed in our discussion points following public comment.
Tonight, you'll do that?
This evening, yes, yes.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else present that would like to speak with respect to this application? Oh, I have to wait 30 seconds. Everybody out there.
Yeah,
sure. That'd be great. Thank you. Very good. Thank you for your help. Okay. Oh, excuse me. That will conclude our public comment portion of the meeting. We will now close it off for the commission discussion. We had the 5 questions posed to us by staff. I'm sure that we each individually have.
Could we do just a little wrap up on behalf of the developer and the proposed project? I think there are a lot of things that were raised that deserve some sort of response or at least a contextual placement
Right.
of those issues.
Could we have him on the mic?
I don't believe that we want to get into point and counterpoint this evening. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to gather all of the information. And then what will happen from this point is to begin to sort through some of that information. Now, you will have an opportunity, because this is your concept plan, it's your informal review essentially. After our discussion, then you will have the opportunity to ask any points of clarification from the commission in terms of our direction for you, because there's two big things that we want to accomplish this evening. First, we want to get the input of our residents. And second of all is we want you to walk away from this evening with a very clear message that you have heard from the public, the general public, and then also from the commission. So you'll have an opportunity to ask any points of clarification at the conclusion of our discussion. And if you have something else that you would like to make clear at that point in time, that would be the appropriate time for that. Okay? All right. Like I said, there were the 5 discussion points that staff provided for us. I'm sure that we had a list of our own coming into this evening, and I suspect that hearing this from the general public this evening, that some others might have risen to the top as a result of that. So we will begin our time, and Ms. Cram, would you like to lead us off?
Sure.
Very good, thank you.
I'll start. First, I want to start and say I've been on this commission for 6 years now, and this is the most people I've ever had at one of my meetings I've been here. So I want to, as a lifelong resident of Dublin, I am very glad to see passionate people come out and show their support or lack of support or whatever for an application. It's just nice to see you guys come out. Also, I would love, for all the passion you've been talking about our schools, I have a son in the school. I graduated from Dublin. I have a son in the school system. I would love you guys to take this to the school board meetings. So fill their rooms full and show all your concerns, because a lot of the concerns you raised tonight aren't specific to this development. That being said, I think I want to start with Ms. Goronsky said a comment, or basically her presentation provided a lot of options of other things that could be done with this property. Unfortunately, our board here has no authority to do anything with those options. Some great ideas presented. They'll be on the record, and hopefully council will hear them, and I can urge you to consider continuing to raise them and bring them to our city's attention. Unfortunately, that's not what we're tasked here to do tonight. We have an applicant who's come and presented something, and he has some questions that he wants answered, and we're kind of tasked with providing our answers the best as possible to that particular application. We can't say build a park. The city has clearly told us that they will not build a park, but you, Ms. Goronsky, gave a lot of great ideas, and maybe keep talking to the council and the city, and maybe things will change. That being said, one of the big questions that's been asked is, what is the benefit of this application? One thing I like to remember is when we get applications in that this is still private property, it's still zoned, they can still do what's under the existing zoning. Sometimes when an application comes through, it's favorable to do a planned unit development rather than the straight zoning, because the planned unit development allows us a lot more control of what happens on that property than if we just let them go build what the straight zoning allows them to. That being said, the proposal as presented today, this concept plan, it's not quite there yet. I don't know that it's better. Could it be better? I really think it could. I think a planned unit development could provide a much better opportunity for this piece of land than if we let it stay as is and let it stay as the existing zoning, and he can go in and build. It's probably not going to be the 181 homes that technically is there by the time you have your EPA guidelines and your stream corridors and those things. It might be 100 homes, it might be 80 homes, but it's still, we don't have the control over what those look like. So that being said, one of our, we have our questions up there. Is the land use appropriate? It's zoned as residential. Is it appropriate to put houses there at what it's zoned for? He can go do that now? Sure. Is it, would I rezone it to a plan unit development or the current plan? No. I think there's too many houses under the current plan, which falls into the next question about density. It's way too dense to be considered open and green space. In our planning report, they used, I can't remember what the term was, but basically it was 1.5 units per acre. It had a conservation, what was the term you guys?
A conservation subdivision.
Conservation subdivision. I think since the lowest density is 1.27 to the east, we would definitely have to be under that. We've generally, when we've had these projects come in, we try to go at least to the lowest number of the surrounding, if not lower. So, you know, a house per acre or something perhaps. I can't give you a direct number. It's all depends on the layout. But I can definitely say the existing 200 and whatever is too large. As for 3, is it appropriate to the surrounding uses? Well, yeah, all the surrounding uses, it's appropriate. In that sense, the school letter is a great reminder. We have had this room full of people upset about noise from schools. And the developer should be aware of that, and there should be large buffers between the athletic fields and homes, because that has been a very high contention. The school letter, it was already read in the record, but yeah, lights, stadium lights, noise, residents don't like those things. And those things are there first. So that is a huge consideration the developer needs to consider. As for the open space, I think there needs to be a lot more of it to balance with the density we're eventually going to allow. There definitely needs to be open space that's usable, not necessarily just passive open space, more park-like usable space, whether it's trails through wooded areas or whatever. I'm going to go through my notes here and see what I haven't talked about here. Mr. Rima mentioned the empty nester housing, which I think is a wonderful option for this property, because you have everyone worried about kids going to school. So if you don't have the kids, that takes a huge burden off. Now, will empty nesters want to live next to a loud stadium and next to schools? I don't know. That's the question for a developer. But I think it's an appropriate house choice as far as not overburdening the schools, which seems to be a big concern. As far as traffic, the commissioners know that's always a huge issue for me. I like to see the traffic reports. I know the traffic reports are going to be done at the expense of the developer. I would like to see them required to maybe expand the number of intersections or the scope of their traffic study, probably larger than maybe we typically require, just so that we cover those real big intersections like Brandon Avery things like that, and the impacts on those. But that all comes later. You know, the developer will do those. The developer pays for those. I know someone mentioned earlier about the cost of roads and sewers. And those are all our agreements as we move on, will come up. The developer usually contributes to those. So we will learn more. There's a lot of unanswered questions. You know, we're here tonight just to do some basic questions. I think I answered most of the questions up there, and I've got like 3 pages scribbled notes. I think I got to most, but I'll reserve the Warren rule.
Very good, thank you. Ms. Newell, would you like to follow Ms. Graham?
Yeah, I'll be happy to. First, I wanted to thank everybody that's come to speak with us, as well as our applicant who is here this evening with our case in front of us. That being said, I'm really saddened to see the loss of Riviera Golf Club and hear that it was potentially closing. It's been in Dublin for a long time, and I am a very long resident of the city of Dublin. And the thing that attracted me to this city was the ability to raise a family, how we had a good school system, that we were close walking distance to our schools in our community, and that we had parkland. And I've lived here long enough that original parkland in the city of Dublin were neighborhood parks, primarily. And I had a vision when I moved here that I hope someday we would, what I used to describe when I would talk to my husband or fellow city officials, that we would have an emerald necklace of parks within the city of Dublin. Unfortunately, I've been here long enough that I see that now. I envision that all of our parks would be interconnected with bike paths and walking parks, and that those neighborhood parks would all of a sudden become community parks because they were all interconnected. So when we have an application that comes before us in that we're looking at a very large, beautiful piece of property, everyone wants it to naturally stay as parkland. That being said, I also have to look at the way this land is currently zoned and what can currently be built on it. We don't have control of Riviera maintaining it as a golf club. If they wish to sell the land, and they do sell the land, and it is zoned residential, then it has the potential of being developed as residential property. So it's our task to see that we develop that land to the very best ability that we can. Keeping it as straight zoning, it will get whatever will come of that residential land. As a planned unit development, it gives us more control, I think, to preserve some of the natural aspects of this site to a greater degree than we would have control if it was left as straight zoning. So do I think that this is an appropriate use of the land? I do, in terms, if I can't preserve it as parkland, I can't preserve it as the golf course that it is, I can preserve it in creating a great residential neighborhood next to other residential neighborhoods. Do I think the proposed density is appropriate? Looking at this site, I would rather see more green space than I'm seeing, so I would prefer a lower density than what I'm seeing in this property. And I'd like that green space that's in there to feel like a park that's contributed to the entire community of Dublin, not just a park associated with the development of this individual piece of property. And that, I think, also answers my question and the relationship to the development of surrounding uses. I do think there needs to be appropriate buffers along the school property. And then along the street frontage of Avery Road, when I'm looking at the site and the open space that you have there, which I definitely would like to see that open space preserved, I would, however, like it to see have a more natural character. It is run completely parallel along that. I think having some undulations in that path of green space may be helpful in the overall design. And I'd like people to be able to see into the green space that's being preserved where you have floodlands in the center of the site as well. So is the open space appropriately located? Yes, except that I would like more interconnection between there and off of Avery so that you had more views into the site.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Buddy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I would state that the concept plan as presented in the requisite rezoning that would be required, I do not support that. I do agree, however, that the existing zoning would allow the developer to go in and develop, and that all interested parties would be well served by participating in developing and working with the developer so that a planned unit development could be put together. I don't believe the proposed land use is appropriate, but the zoning precludes me from saying that, gee, I can't support it. I have to. The density as proposed is, it would be many more houses than I think should be developed. I think the relationship of the development areas to the surrounding uses could be designed and be appropriate. I would agree with my fellow commissioners that the buffers along the school properties would need to be developed. I'm very concerned about the impact on the schools and the schools' impact, you know, vice versa on the residents who would live there. I'm very concerned about the traffic. I'm a biker. I'm on Brand Road. I'm on Avery Road. I'm going north and south. I'm going east and west on long rides with groups of people. I know that intersection at Avery and Brand, four-way stop, and we have groups going both ways through there all the time. I do think that some kind of development is going to happen here. I think it's going to be a long, arduous process, and I would encourage the developer to work with all the interested groups who've come tonight, who've spent so much time and energy studying and researching and stating their concerns to work with them. And I'd be very adamant that there needs to be some kind of agreement, cooperation amongst all the parties. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Fishman?
First, I'd like to say that sitting here tonight, I'm really proud to be a Dublin resident. Dublin is supposedly one of the smartest cities in the world. I think we were rated sixth smartest or seventh smartest, and it really shows tonight. I really applaud all the preparation that you people spent hours, I'm sure, in getting statistics and giving logical reasons for your beliefs. And whether anybody agrees or disagrees with you, I think it's commendable. And people might say, well, they came here because they have an interest. Well, that's not Dublin. There's thousands of people that volunteer in Dublin that don't have an interest. The Irish Festival couldn't happen without all the volunteers. The St. Patrick's Day Parade, which is Saturday, couldn't happen without all the volunteers. So when people say, well, they're here because of special interest, I disagree. And I can't commend you enough and for having a civil meeting, expressing civilly your beliefs, no matter how passionate and emotional you are about them. I think you all should be commended. So I'll start that way. Okay, now, I'm going to skip around this list. Is the proposed density appropriate? I don't think it's even close. Muirfield is 1.27 units per acre, and it's 2,300 units. One of the traditions we have in Dublin is we try to make things better and better. So the next subdivision that comes in should be better and better. And if it has to be a subdivision, it has to be housing, it should be something that knocks our socks off. Because, as Mr. Ruma so aptly said, it's the last piece we have. And so I think that I would encourage my colleagues here on this board and city council, if it ends up a subdivision, that it should be something incredible, and it should be surely less than 1.27 units per acre. So that's the question of density. Is the proposed land use appropriate? Well, it's zoned that way. It's a straight zoning, so as Mr. Buddy said, there's not much we can do about that. However, sometimes if we wait, better things happen. And in my years here in Dublin, I've been here a long time, and I can only say that because I'm old, we've seen developers come in and say, there's no market for housing now, so we want to put in warehouses. Or there's no market for warehouses, so we want to put in apartments. And it didn't happen, and guess what? The right thing ended up there. So I think that we shouldn't be so hasty. Is the relationship of the development to the surrounding area appropriate? Well, you can say yes or no. Sure, there's houses around the area. As I said, Muirfield's 1.27 units per acre, but there's also schools, there's also crowded roads, and we've heard traffic over and over again, but there could be a better relationship because it's crowded roads and houses. So I don't know if the relationship is better. The next question is the open space appropriately located? I think it's got to be usable open space. One of the things that I've seen over and over again with developments, we take land that can't be developed anyway. You can't develop the land around the water. You can't develop the floodplain. You need to have a setback from Avery Road. So I don't consider that free space. I don't consider that open space. You got to have a right of way from the road, okay? So I think that if the developer's heart's in the right place, we'll put usable, if we have to have a subdivision, open space. I was told by our parks director a long time ago that open space isn't much good unless it's 3.8 acres as far as a usable park. So we need open space scattered throughout the development that is usable space. The space around the water and next to the roads, that's a given, okay? I don't think that should even count as open space, even though it does. But I think if you're saying, is it properly located? I don't think it is. I think that the question are other considerations by commission. I think this audience has done a terrific job of talking about other considerations, and I think that like my fellow members, if this was a perfect world, I'd sure like to see that a park because there is no other major park in that area, and I think that most people that move to the area kind of dream that always would be green space, but we know that that if it's zoned residential, it has a possibility of becoming residential. But I think that I think Mr. Ruma is doing what he has the right to do, and make a proposal. And I think that he's heard a lot of intelligent people tonight give intelligent information to him, and I hope he takes that into consideration. But I think that I've answered the questions, and I think that Mr. Room, he doesn't live in Dublin, so he might be not one of the top 7 intelligent people, but just kidding. But I think that he heard it loud and clear, and I think that I've answered the questions. And I have the right to come back there.
I would expect nothing less.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Taylor.
Amy just reminded me that it's Warren's last day, so he can say whatever he wants.
Yeah, I didn't want to say that, but.
Well, I also wanted to preface my comments with a compliment to the crowd, but Warren did such a wonderful job complimenting you all for everything you've done that I will just ditto his comments. I do want to throw little compliment to Mr. Ruma's group for coming to a concept review with a concept plan, a true concept plan. We often are a little frustrated when we see concept plans up here that are way beyond concepts. This is still wide open, and you've admitted that. So there's a lot of room here with just one drawing for us to take a look at and see if there's something that we can't make better. But because it's a concept review, I don't feel bound by not being able to comment about the land use and this because of the zoning and that kind of thing. So I'm just going to say what I think about this and start with there. I would prefer that this remain a golf course, and preferably a public golf course, and ideally a municipal golf course. I'd love if there was a way that that could happen. I think it's, I guess the right word to say is awkward, that a city that was born out of golf, that markets itself so heavily around golf, that invests so heavily in golf, how much money did we pour into the President's Cup this year, would actually consider removing a golf course, and as I learned tonight, Dublin's first golf course. So I find that awkward. I read again today in Business First about Shamrock, about to be developed as housing, and there was little opposition to that, but gosh, Shamrock's kind of the place I learned to play golf. It's the place where families go to learn to play golf and play golf together, and to replace a recreation destination with houses that no longer have that recreation destination to go to, again, seems a little awkward to me, and I'd hate to see that happen here. I do, however, because we've been asked to, want to address some of the specifics about this plan, and the issues that are of a concern to me were all brought up by people here this evening. And I'd like to take a little bit of different tack on some of these and kind of explain some of my thinking on this. And the first I'll start off is with the issue of congestion, traffic congestion in particular. It's pretty easy to put up a chart and say that traffic congestion is caused by houses and traffic congestion is caused by people. It really isn't, and as Mr. Rozier, I think, Kip mentioned earlier, he had a chart up there that showed trips on it, car trips. That's the real culprit here. That's the real enemy. That's the thing that causes congestion. But the thing that causes car trips is having to get in the car and go somewhere. And those are the daily needs things that we all have to do: shopping, schools, work, church, recreation, that kind of thing. And when you look at this location and when you look at this side of Dublin in general, what you find is none of that stuff, with the exception of schools, is readily available to anyone by foot or by bicycle. The nearest shopping, for example, at Shawnee Hills, the CVS and the Walgreens, there is a 2.5-mile drive from Riviera Golf Club. The neighborhood retail center at Terra Hill and Muirfield Drive is also 2.5 miles away, and Perimeter is 3 miles away. The nearest post office is 5 miles away. If I want to mail a package and I live at Riviera Golf Course, I have to do a 10-mile round trip to mail a package. Those are the things that cause traffic congestion. Because of our street design, our street layout design in this city, all of these developments funnel the traffic onto the same handful of roads, and of course that congests those roads more heavily. It's why we have so much of a problem at Avery and Brand, because there's a lot of different places that funnel into that. On top of that, we have a section of town here that is very homogeneous in terms of the type of housing that we have. And when you have that, what you have is families about the same age, about the same number of kids, about the same income, they work about the same place, about the same time. And so everyone, and somebody brought this up tonight in a little bit different angle, everyone leaves the house at the same time to go to work. Everybody leaves the house at the same time to take the kids to school. Everybody leaves the house at the same time to go shopping in the middle of the day. Everybody comes, leaves the house again to pick up the kids after school. Everybody leaves work and comes home at the same time. So there's a bunch of bubbles throughout the day where traffic's really bad because all of us are the same. We're doing the same thing at the same time in the same place. So that's really where that problem comes from, is all of those issues there. The other thing that causes traffic congestion is schools to a certain degree. And it's interesting to me on this particular location that we're contiguous with all 3 schools' boundaries here. And yet there really isn't any significantly useful way to get from this development to any of the schools without going through somebody's yard. And it doesn't do anything to make that travel easier from the existing neighborhoods to the south. When I was a kid, I lived a mile away from the school. This is much less distance than that, and I could walk, a long time ago, Warren, but not as long ago as Warren. I could walk to school on residential streets and sidewalks the entire way, start to finish. I also, there was a convenience store 2 blocks from my house, and the place where I had my first job, a restaurant, where I bussed tables, I could walk to and back every day. So my mom didn't drive much at all. And it's because the things that we did during the day on a daily basis were close by. But so if a development's to happen here, it's got to be something that not only connects to the school so that the kids can safely walk to school, but also so that their parents don't have to drive them to school, and keep that traffic inside that development and keep it off of Avery Road. Would also allow the people that live in the developments to the south to do the same thing. They could then, I mean, I look at this, and if I wanted to walk to the school, man, that's a long, curvy path, and it never ends up at the schools. There ought to be something there that makes a direct route to connect to the schools in there. So the possibility exists that this land could be developed as housing, and I want to make sure that if that comes to pass, that we make sure that we give Mr. Irma some comments about this that are going to help him to decide what the proper direction to go from here is. So if we're going to develop this, I think that the first thing that we need to do is we need to address the needs of the community. And I think that one of the big needs of the community is not to have more single-family houses. There was an excellent chart up there that showed we've got a lot of empty lots in town right now. That doesn't mean there can't be any here, but I don't think that we need to have 284 of them. What we really need in this area to reduce traffic congestion, which is a major issue, is neighborhood-level services. And I won't suggest what that might be, but there are neighborhood-level services in other parts of Dublin that work very well and reduce traffic trips, car trips. Specifically, you could talk about the Terra Hill, Muirfield Drive development there. That UDF is one of the busiest in the country. And a lot of the traffic to that place is walk-in and bike traffic. We also need to have direct walkable access to schools, which I spoke about here. And something that I heard Mr. Irma say, which piqued my interest because it was on my list, is we need to have housing for some of the underserved citizens in our community. And fortunately, the most underserved citizens in my awareness of this city are the ones that would use the roads the least. And I'll use my parents as an example. They've lived in Muirfield for a long time. They didn't want to leave Muirfield as they aged, but they couldn't find a suitable place to downsize to in Muirfield, so they stayed in their house. Now, they stayed in their house way too long, and their next stop is a retirement home. What would have been better for them to do would be to find a suitable flat somewhere in Muirfield so they could stay close to their friends, stay close to their family, and let their family house go to another family instead of building another family house somewhere else that family would move into. My folks don't drive too much. They certainly don't get up early in the morning and drive to work. They don't drive kids to school. And the trips that they take for shopping are very few. So if we could include a significant number of units to serve that underserved population, that would help out a large segment of our population in the city, and it would also reduce the traffic congestion or prevent further traffic congestion that dumping 284 homes into this area with nowhere to go but Avery Road would do. So the things that I've mentioned, this proposal doesn't really address any of them very well. It adds more cars and more car trips onto already congested roads. It further isolates the existing neighborhoods from the adjacent schools. It doesn't even give itself access to the schools, and it only has one type of housing. As this has been talked about publicly, people have come to me and wanted to comment on it, and of course we don't discuss that publicly, but I do hear people's comments, and I've heard a couple people comment, although I didn't hear it tonight, about solutions to widen streets and improve intersections and that kind of thing. And what I want to point out here is that that really isn't a solution to traffic congestion. and I don't want anybody to, if this proposal should move ahead in any form, to think that that's a solution. There's a thing out there called induced demand that has to do with streets. And what induced demand means is when you make streets wider and bigger and faster and all that kind of thing, the impression is that the same amount of traffic will now be more spread out on that road, and that does happen for a short while. But what eventually happens is it actually draws more traffic to those roads. And my, the example that I use frequently of this was the north leg of 270. I was here when it was 4 lanes. And they said, we're going to double the width of that thing, make it 8 lanes, and it's going to solve all the traffic problems. Well, we went from 4 lanes of congestion to 8 lanes of congestion. It's still terrible. Route 23 intersection is still horrifically bad, and now they're going to spend more money to do that again. That's induced demand. You make the road bigger, wider, and faster, and more people use it. So I don't want anyone to think that that's going to be the solution. The last issue that I want to talk about here, Warren touched on very well, and that's the parks, and I put in quotes, open space. Open space is not the space that's left over between people's backyards, which is what this plan shows. That's not easily accessible to the public. If we're going to have open space, if we're going to have parks, it's got to be designed, it's got to be planned, it's got to be useful space. The term conservation subdivision design has been thrown around a couple times. Conservation subdivision design is an old concept, and basically what it means is you group all the houses together in pods and you landscape what's left over. And in theory, that leaves more open space, but if it's not designed, it's not programmed, and it's not planned, it doesn't do anybody any good. If the city just spends money, or the homeowners association just spends money mowing the grass and tending the flowers that no one can see except out their back window. So to the questions, is the land use appropriate? Again, I'll go back to my original thought that because this is an informal review, that I don't feel bound by the zoning on this. No, I don't think it's appropriate. I think it'd be much more appropriate as a golf course or parkland. Is the density appropriate? Well, if it's going to be developed, no. I think this density is far too high. Does it have a proper relationship to the surrounding uses? Not at all. I think that the relationship to the surrounding uses, which are mostly schools, is completely non-existent, and that needs to be addressed. And is the open space appropriately located? No. The open space, as Mr. Fishman said, would be better off to be useful parks, maybe smaller parks, maybe a series of parks, maybe a smaller, maybe an emerald bracelet here instead of a necklace. But it has to be used and planned and designed. So just to sum up here, my personal preference, I'd like to see it remain a golf course. As a planning commissioner, I'm not necessarily opposed to development of the site, but it's got to be much different. It's got to be much more intelligent, and it can't just be a reaction, as Mr. Fishman said, to the current marketplace. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Well, I would like to start out specifically by thanking Mr. Mess, Walter, Fathman, Rosier, McCourt, Ms. Gronkowski, and Mr. Gable for, sorry, I just mispronounced your name again, for coordinating the efforts for the community. That what a wonderful representation of a community working together to bring for those individuals to take the initiative, to bring forward valid, outstanding points presented in an exceptional way, to be concise, and to depict what the issues are for the residents surrounding this piece of property. So I first would like to thank you for doing that. And the members of those homeowners associations are certainly fortunate to have folks like that are willing to undergo that task on their behalf. So thank you for that. It is always a joy for me to see this room filled, because when people are passionate about their community becomes better. And that's very clear tonight. So I applaud all of you on those efforts. I'm not as old as Warren, but I have lived in Dublin longer. And I'm a day older today than I was yesterday. But that being said, I want to take just a moment and describe the difference between the community plan and zoning on a piece of property. The zoning on this piece of property would allow it roughly 1 unit per acre. So we have 280, I'm sorry, no we don't. We have 168 acres, that's the proposed 284 homes. So the zoning that's on the property right now would allow the developer to build roughly 1 unit per acre. Some of that would be deducted because he needs streets and things like that, and the lots would still need to come out to be about an acre apiece, okay? So that's what the zoning that's on the property right now says that happens. We have the community plan, which is, as Mr. Walter said, is a guiding document for the way land is used. And that's the guiding document that we use when rezoning is under consideration. If Mr. Ruma wanted to develop that land tomorrow, he could begin to do so, and if he met the letter of the law of the zoning code, he could move forward with the zoning that's in place on the property now. His intent is to do something more, he would like to what we call upzone this particular piece of property, which would allow him to build more houses on the property. So I want to, you guys, it's very fantastic that you have taken such a close look at the community plan. But what governs what happens on that property right now is the zoning that's in place. And the community plan guides the changing in that zoning. So I just wanted to make that clarification. Ms. Cram stated that if we would entertain a rezoning of that, it is a give and take relationship, and what we give in that relationship is typically more density, and what we take is a higher standard. If he were to build homes on that today, all it would need to do is meet the letter of the building code, okay, which is typically in the city a much lower standard than our PUD codes. So if you are a resident in Muirfield or Belvedere, the materials that you're required to use are typically upsized from what's in the straight zoning code. The relation of the architecture of your home and the detail to different architectural elements is there as well. So I wanted to just take a moment to describe the difference of those two things. So, we've had Mr. Ruma come here. He's looking for an upzoning. And that has yet to be seen if that will happen or not. It's very concerning to hear what's happened at Wellington Place, and we have wonderful folks here that have the ability to take that all to code enforcement, and I'm sure that you've rung that bell as well. But I will continue to try to ring that bell with you, because as a commission that approved that zoning, the promises were made to us as well as they were made to you, and we want those to ring true and come to fruition. We have also had this room full to capacity when we talked about the Jerome baseball diamonds, and the difference between a baseball game and a football game is severe. They don't really use amplification. They don't do all of those kinds of things that a football field does. And it is very concerning to me to see any homes back up against a football field, because I don't know that people will really understand how loud that is. When the baseball diamond folks were here, they talked about how they could hear shouting from individuals and say, hey, batter, 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 and that was offensive to them. And that there were some words that were used by high school students that were less than brought smiles to the parents of the children's faces that were playing in their backyard. And I've been to a number of baseball games and a whole bunch of football games, and all of those things are present there too. I am a Muirfield resident. I live all the way on the other side of Muirfield Drive, and in the evenings of September and October, I can sit on my back patio and I could tell you who carried the ball. So I want you to know that it's loud, and we really need to be sensitive to that. I think the schools, in their infinite wisdom, for good reason, chose to put the football field there because they thought it was the least likely place for development to be adjacent to. I believe they were trying to be sensitive to that. We as a city, we like to tout our horn that we are a wonderful city and people come here because we're so wonderful. But I first and foremost am a parent, and I can tell you that we are a wonderful city and that people come here because of our schools. It's the way it is. We do some great things as a city, but what we really do well is educate our young people. And that has to be on the forefront of all of our minds when we do this, although it's not necessarily applicable in our job as commissioners. It certainly is what is good for the city. With that being said, what we typically hold, and for those of you from Wellington Place know, what we typically hold a developer to is a standard higher than their neighbor. To me, your neighbor is going to be Muirfield, and that is at 1.27 units per acre. And I think that the standard should be higher than that. That there would be less density here than there is there. There are sections of Muirfield that are less dense than 1.27, but on a whole average, I think that is the neighbor that we need to be looking at for that. Is the proposed land use appropriate? Well, the answer to that question in my mind for residential has to be yes, because that's the zoning that's in place on it today. Is that what's desirable? No. I would prefer to see this remain a golf course, but that is not the zoning that is on this piece of property today. Is the density appropriate? No, I think the density is very inappropriate. Is the relationship of development areas to surrounding uses appropriate? I would say no. Mr. Taylor did an outstanding job of illustrating the connectivity issues that would need to be resolved and possible ways that we could reduce the number of trips required in and out of this neighborhood on a daily basis. Is the open space appropriately located? I would say no. Mr. Fishman talked about the setback from Avery Road. That's more, in my mind, more of a requirement. If we're going to have open space, I would like to see it be in some way, shape, or form usable. I look out and see some of my kids' old soccer coaches and football coaches and things here, and I know that we have practiced many times at Belvedere in different open spaces that are there. They're not soccer fields, but they're open spaces that are usable. And we can set up our little soccer goals in under 5 minutes and have practice, which, to Mr. Taylor's point, reduces the number of trips required to come and go. So I would like to see some density to the open spaces that would make it more usable. Other considerations by the commission, let's face it, you guys did the work to come up with the numbers. We're all the drain on the system, right? So every time that anyone's ever come in here to zone where you live, they could have made the same argument, that your house was a drain on the system. Particularly for those of us that don't work in the city of Dublin. For those that do, at least we lessen the blow, and we have to be very grateful to our corporate citizens for that. But when we look in the mirror, we have to be honest, it's all of us. And we owe great volunteerism to our schools and to our city at large. I think that's a consideration of this commission. So I would prefer for it to see it as a golf course. I understand that that's not the zoning that's on this piece of property at present. The charge before us is to make it as good as we can possibly get it. I had hopes and dreams that this would be a wetlands preservation as well. That may or may not be in the cards. I think it certainly deserves some exploration. But at the end of the day, it's zoned for residential. And we need to make it as good as it possibly can be. With that, I would like to invite the applicant forward. And you have absorbed a couple of hours of comments from the residents and from this commission.
I'm Jeff Brown. I'm a partner with the firm of Smith & Hale. I'm one of Ben Hale's replacement with the city. We appreciate the commission's comments. We understand and appreciate the recognition of the existing zoning. I also understand in a perfect world this would remain as open space. Change is always threatening. Having open space is always advantageous. I think the comments that you have made to make either a bracelet or a necklace out is very good. We have had dialogue with the schools. We'll continue to do that. We understand the importance of that. I think one of the exciting things about this particular site, has been mentioned by the commission, is the location of the 3 schools and the ability to truly walk to school. I lived a mile away, and I thought my mom should drive me, and she thought I should walk. So I think you'll still have that conflict even if we create the pass system in terms of how you get your child to school. But I think one of the things we appreciate is also your explanation of the advantages of the PUD, that having a PUD gives you more control, it gives the neighbors more input, and at the end of the day produces a better product. And I think the analysis of a trade-off on density versus getting higher standards has been something that Dublin has used to the advantage of the neighbors and the city on various projects that you have reviewed and approved. So I think we've got a lot of comments. That is the reason we started off as a concept plan, because we knew this would be controversial. Always the last piece is the piece that everybody thinks should remain open. And I'm sure if you talk to the golf members up there, they were kind of shocked and everything to all of a sudden see a swing set where they usually put their drives on several holes. So there were changes for the golfers as the courses were, as the schools were built. I've played up there. I understand the noise level. I can tell you every song that the band was practicing through the 4 hours of playing my round. So I think the comments are very good, and we obviously will have to take time and react to them. But as you know, and just to reiterate to the neighbors, the traffic study, Dublin Code requires us to do that. And it's something that we provide, they review, and if staff is comfortable, then they approve it. Same thing with the sanitary sewer. We understand the problem. EMH&T has been working on a solution. So I think we understand what our issues are, and we're committed to meeting and resolving as many of those things as we can with the neighbors.
I just want to thank everybody for showing up. I heard all the comments. I have been through this a couple times. I've been through worse. I appreciate the fact that there's a little respect here and guidance, and I want you to know that I'm going to do what I can to make sure that I react as best I can. I plan on developing the property. I do. If there's a better way to do it, then the property can be sold at the same price to others, I'm sure. But I don't have to build it. I don't have to develop it. But it needs to be sold, and it needs to be sold at fair market. And to that extent, if somebody wants to come up with an offer, if the city feels like buying it for a park, then they should approach me, and I will pass on my costs, just without making a profit. I think that the one thing that really bothered me tonight, and I'm going to look into it, is the Wedgwood Estates situation, Wellington Reserve. That was sold to my son. He's planning on building 28 homes there. He had the first 2 weeks of sales, he had 38 deposits. First 2 weeks. And he's now writing contracts. He had to go through a lottery to select lot selection. And the first few contracts range from $750,000 to $900,000. Now, that's all well and good, but if we did something to the properties adjacent to us, I'm going to make sure I look at it. I know that we haven't taken care of the trees because of the late development. I just found out about the mistake on the tree on Brand Road, and I'm sorry about that, but I will look into it. It's not my style. I hope you understand that's not my style. And the pictures you saw were real, but they were during construction. And hopefully you saw that. There were no streets. It was during construction. But regardless of whether it's what the situation is, I'm going to look into it, and I will live up to my obligation to make sure that the trees are planted and the water is handled so that it's not a burden on neighbors. That was my commitment. So I stand to that, and whatever staff wants to do or work with us, and I'm standing ready and standing tall to fix it. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate the time you give to the community. Thanks.
Okay. Well, if there are no other questions on behalf of the applicant. There is no vote to be taken this evening, and so this will conclude the portion of our meeting dedicated to the Saddle Reserve project.
Say something for Warren. Anything?
I did. Oh, Riviera.
It's your birthday. It's okay.
That's your birthday. Jeez. We have a couple other things to do, so we'll give them just a couple minutes. Okay. We're going to take a 5-minute break, and we will resume at 9:10.
But I haven't been down there.